All right, let's do this thing. So we know we can talk forever, but give me like a 30-second intro about yourself for everybody so that they understand what you do.
I am the coolest person you'll ever meet.
Done. I'm giving a talk next weekend, and someone was like, all right, they were like, hey, they need a description of you. And I just put awesome, period. And I sent it, and I just waited for a reply. I was like, that's it. You don't need anything else.
I have a lot of titles. I don't know which ones you want.
Let me do it.
Yeah.
Heather's my life coach. I found her at the lowest point in my life. If you guys listen to the Cassandra podcast, if you shouldn't, you should go back and listen to it. She was also her life coach, referred me to Heather, changed my life exponentially. Like, I mean, a complete 180. You know, there's a story I want to start talking about parenting. And I think what I want to do actually is, I've been thinking, not today, we're not going to do it today, but we're going to do it again. Cause I've been thinking about like really telling my backstory and about how it came about and everything that I went through and how it happened. And I've been thinking about how I'm going to communicate that without, demeaning, downputting, or hurting the other party, right? Like my ex-wife, because it's not, I don't want anybody to have a predisposition towards her because I took complete responsibility, and that's something we'll talk about on there. And so I do want to have you on, and I want to navigate that together to make sure that I'm staying constantly in that lane because you were there for all of it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's super important, right? We don't want to point fingers, and we don't want anything like that. So we will talk about that at some point, but
no, we were literally just talking about that before we started the podcast. Right. Like relationships, nobody's doing anything wrong. Mm-hmm. It's just how two people are interacting with each other. And there are some things that you can learn to shift, and there's some things that are just like your temperament, your personality, and those things mesh or they don't. Yeah. And so you guys had really good temperaments and personalities together, but your communication skills and those kinds of things. But that was all learnable.
It was all learnable, for sure. It was all learnable. Yeah. And but the point of all of these things, I mean, that was for sure the most frustrating part on my end, is going through everything. But I was in the sauna the other day, and I was talking to somebody, and I was telling them about you and my experience and all of these things. And like I was like, you know, I remember being on like basically my hands and knees or in the chair, bent over, crying, like always, apologizing to you that I can't look at you in the eyes, you know, like all this stuff because I'm too busy crying and holding my stomach.
My favorite was the session when it was like we went through like 55 minutes and you're like, I didn't cry. And then in the last 5 minutes, you're like, woo.
Fuck you. It's so true. I was like, I remember like looking at the clock, like I got 3 minutes. I got this. And then I was like, I don't know, 10 seconds after that, bawling. It was fucking great. But there was this pivotal thing that you told me that you told me a million pivotal things, but this one like sticks out the most. Is in that process, there was this for about 24 hours, this thing where there was going to be this 6-month learning period about each other and this grace period, and then coming to make a decision, right? That was, you know, a brief 24-hour thing. And I remember looking at you and being like, well, what if in 6 months she doesn't want me? And you looked me dead in the eyes and you were like, what if you don't want her? And I was like, whoa, that's an option? Like, it like short circuit. It was a pattern interrupt in my brain because everything was focused on how do I make this thing happen?
How do I be a good boy? How do I please her?
Yes.
How do I be nice? How do I make this work? How do I fix this?
Yep. And then you were like, well, what if you don't want her? And it opened up a world of possibilities of like the no more Mr. Nice Guy. And then I did we worked together for a long time and still, you know, do. And well, you were right.
Those are my favorite words.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's why we get along so well. And that was so pivotal in my transformation. And I think you can apply it to everything, but you know, and it was awesome. But I digress. We'll have a whole podcast about that. So we're going to talk about kids and relationships and families.
Now
and
you all are prepped and primed for the next podcast.
Prepped and primed for the next one. And so I'm going to tell this story about Sloan. I'm going to do my best not to butcher this story because it just happened and I purposely didn't tell you because I was like, okay, let me try and remember all of these things. Okay. So it was 2 nights ago and we're at the house, amazing night, finished watching Pumping Iron because it's like her new favorite movie. God, every day she makes me more proud of her. She literally pointed at the TV screen and was like, "Daddy, that's you," to Arnold. And I was like, "Stop." And I grabbed my phone out of the phone jail and was like, "Say it again."
Phone jail.
We made a phone jail. And so I'm like, "Say it again." And I video recorded it. And I was like, goddamn right, I'm Arnold. And so we have this amazing night, and then it's bedtime. And we get in bed, we cuddle always. We listen to like one of the meditations on like the Headspace app, and like we just, cuddle. And it's just what we do. And then she decides she's hot. And I'm like, "Okay, baby, we'll go get a shirt." And I turn like the phone light on, and my bed's like right by her closet. Like you've seen it, like 4 feet away. She's like, "No, I'm not going to go get it." I'm like, "Okay, well, you're not going to get your shirt, like whatever." So then it escalates and it escalates and it escalates. And then she's like, "Well, I'm scared." I'm like, "Okay, well, in this house, we feel the fear and do it anyways. Dad's 4 feet away. You're going to be okay." Right. And so now it's a power struggle. Now we don't want to go to sleep, and it's all these things. And
She's so smart.
She's so smart. She's so smart. So now it's building and it's building and it's building. And I'm like, okay, now it's turning into a whole thing. And then I'm like, okay, keep in my center. And I'm like, all right, in 50 years, like, what lesson am I teaching here? What is the power struggle about? In 50 years, is this going to matter? Like, what are all the things at play here? And I'm like, okay, son, I do have to get work done, and we're taking a lot of time fighting for no reason. I said, but I will get up and I will get you the shirt. I'll help you even put it on if you would like, but then you're going to have to lay down and go to sleep, and then I'm going to go into the other room and do work. So I get up and I get the shirt and I give it to her, and she throws it at me. And I'm like, "Oh, no." Okay. So I'm like, now she's escalating even more, right? Now she's like yelling and screaming because she's vocal and powerful and strong, and I've told her not to hold it in, all these things, right? I've taught her to be all these things. So she's letting it all out, and I'm like, "Okay, Sloan, I'm going to go into the other room. When you're done, when you're centered, when you're calmed down, you're welcome to come get me. Come get me, and I'll come back in here. We'll do this all again. I'm here for you. I'm not leaving the house. I'm not leaving you, but I'm not going to participate in this behavior." So I leave in the other room screaming for me to come in there, all these things. And then she changes her tone, gets calmed down, brings it back to center, all of these things after an extended period of time. And then asked me, like, "Dad, will you please come in here?" So I go in. So I go in, toys are on her 2 stuffies are on the floor. And I go in, and she says something, and we start talking. She's like, "I just get so mad." And I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about this. Now we're here. All right, we're here. This is what I want." I'm like, and so before she said anything else, I was like, "I am so proud of you for communicating how you feel right now. And I'm here, and let's talk about it." And so she's explaining to me how she gets mad, and then it builds, and she's like, "I can't control it." And then it builds even more, and then I can't control it. And I just get angry, and I don't know what to do. And then I throw things. I'm like, "Okay, my job is to teach you how to control that." I said, "Because you know that you can." She's like, "I can't." And I'm like, "Okay."
It feels like you can't because you're flooded in adrenaline and cortisol and the whole thing. Like you literally can't.
So
you can learn.
So then she explains to me what can't means better than anybody else, right? She gives me this explanation of can't. She's like, and in my head, can't doesn't mean that. Can't means that I'm having a hard time figuring out how to do it. She's 6. I'm like, what the fuck? Why can't I record this? I can't record this, And so I'm like, okay, I understand that that's how you feel in your mind. I get it. It makes perfect sense. I said, my job though is to teach you that this is how we regulate the nervous system and we calm it down, and that you can control these things, right? So we're still having this conversation. And so then she's like, well, I feel sad. I'm like, okay. Do you feel sad, or are these feelings just feelings that are really big and you're not used to?
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a feeling that what's going on in the moment of I'm angry and then I get angrier and then I don't know what to do. I can't figure it out. The I can't figure it out is pretty normal human stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to make Dad happy. I want to make my husband happy. I want to make people happy. And if I can't figure it out, that I'm doing something wrong, and therefore there must be something wrong with me, and that's shame. And so when I have a shame response, then I'm going to have more of a fight or flight response. Because now I'm ashamed that I'm having feelings. I'm ashamed that I'm feeling shame. I'm ashamed I'm not doing it right. I'm ashamed I'm not getting your attention the way that I thought it was going to work. I don't know what to do. I can't think straight. My brain's not working. There's more shame.
Yeah.
And it's a spiral.
So she basically brings all this up. So what you just said, so then that was one of the other parts that happened in there. So then I explained, so the next thing is I started to explain to her, like, I'm like, okay, Sloan, do you understand what I did? Like, do you understand why I chose to walk away? And I was like, and I chose to walk away because you are allowed to experience and feel anything you want at any time. And you can act however you choose to act in those moments. I'm not angry about how you act at all. We live in a world where this is how it is. People can act however they want. Look, if you want to identify as a lampshade and put a light bulb up your butt, you can.
Did you say that to her?
No, I didn't tell her that. but I told her, but that's the world we're in right now. But I don't have to participate in fucking screwing the light bulb in your ass, right? So, but I told her, like,
yes,
look,
we do not recommend on this podcast putting light bulbs up your ass.
We definitely don't. Unless you think you're a lamp. I digress. But I explained to her, like, this is, you can be and act however you want. It doesn't mean dad has to participate in it. So my goal in doing this is to, one, keep my boundaries. And in doing that, show you that your boundaries matter and that people can act however they want, but you don't have to participate. And she literally says, I know that you're trying to teach me boundaries, but what I need is you in here with me so that I can learn. And I was like, okay. Like, fuck.
I love her so much.
Fuck. And I'm like, okay, so you're 6. Like,
and I'm getting it.
Yeah, and I'm getting it. And so all of that, like.
But you're like, she's still in her emotional brain. Her logical forethinking brain hasn't come online yet altogether. Maybe in the next year or two. You've been stuck in your logical forethinking brain for way too long, and we've been working on getting you out of that and getting into this place where emotions are okay and you're not ashamed to feel your emotions and all that stuff. And so when Sloan is having a very normal, very natural, very childlike emotional reaction, it is uncomfortable for you. And
100%.
Something I've been learning lately is...
Welcome to Coaching with Heather 101.
It's way easier to co-regulate than it is to regulate myself.
So then my question with that is, sure, it's easier to co-regulate, but then this co-regulation create codependence.
She's 6.
I knew you were going to say that. But okay, but
she
for real though.
She doesn't have a logical forethinking brain yet. She only has an amygdala and a brainstem and a reptilian brain and an emotional brain, and she's learning programming, and you're her model.
Okay, perfect. So she is learning programming and I am the model. So then...
But you're the emotional. Right now, you're the emotional model. In the next year or two, you're going to become the logical model. And what's so cool about Sloan is she's like, but Dad, I'm having an emotional experience.
Yeah, right. Which, though, I believe was taught through being able to express and talk to her the way I do.
Yeah. So, well, no, it's actually natural.
Okay.
But you're allowing it where most people don't allow it. And that's what I wanted to bring to the table today.
I knew that this would segue right into what we wanted to talk about.
Emotionally immature people, emotionally immature parenting. Because Sloan is very in touch with her emotions, but all children come prepared. Like, you come out of the womb emotionally saying, I need my diaper changed. I need to be fed. I need to sleep. I'm sick. And basically, anytime a child is having a temper tantrum, it's those things. They're tired, they're sick, they're hungry, or they need to go to the bathroom.
Right.
It's very, very basic. And usually children are screaming and throwing things because there's a basic need that needs to be met. Sloan's a little older. She's not an infant. She's not 3 years old. She is starting to learn how to think. She has learned communication skills. We learn that around age 2, age 3. We learn language, and we learn to start interacting with each other with language. But most people, by the time they're 2 or 3, they've learned, if I have a temper tantrum, if I have a need, it's very likely that my parent isn't going to meet my emotional need. They may meet my physical need, like to go to the bathroom or feed me, but they may not necessarily know how to calm down the anger that's turning into rage, that's turning into shame, that I'm telling you I'm feeling afraid and I'm having all these feelings at the same time and you're leaving?
Yeah.
You're leaving?
Yeah.
And And then you're telling her, go ahead and manage your emotions on your own. You got this. But she doesn't have any logical thinking forebrain to be able to do that yet. And so I know that you're trying to teach her all of that, but it's just a little bit too early.
Okay. I hate you so much.
I know. You also love me. My favorite moment in coaching is when they say, I hate you and I love you.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, this is part of why I even started the podcast, was because I wanted to be better at the whole thing.
Well, and for everyone else to be better.
Of course.
That's the whole reason we do all this.
And it's definitely hard because I know that there's like the duality of the subconscious is being wide open. So there is the part of me that is like, okay, what am I feeding that she believes she's going to get attention from? Right? Because I don't want her to link the tantrum with her needs being met. Can I give you an example? I would love for you to give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you're upset, and I just go like this and hold your hand.
Yeah.
And breathe.
Yeah. I try that with her. And then she freaks out. Doesn't want touched.
She doesn't want to be touched? No. That's how Jack was.
Yeah, of course that's how Jack was. It's like so this is what probably one of my favorite things about her is all of those things. Like I do them and I try to do them. And like we're getting closer now to where like, you know, when something like this happens, months ago, she kind of had like a similar type situation. I was like, let Dad teach you. She's like, I don't know how to control this. And I'm like, can I share some of the things that I do? You know, I really like to be touched. I really like my back tickled. I really like to breathe. I really like to whatever. And so she let me do them. But when she's in it, no fucking way. Everything that like that, it's she's someone once told me that her power animal is a Tasmanian devil, and the hallmark of a Tasmanian devil is that if you capture them and put them in captivity, they'll kill themselves because they would rather die than live captive. And I'm like, yeah, well, you nailed that one. Like, couldn't be more accurate about my daughter.
I know, that's why I call her my spirit animal.
Yeah. So
the freedom thing, I get it.
But, you know, I also wonder if maybe I did that earlier, talking about the subconscious programming. Maybe if I knew those things earlier in the dynamic of the relationship with her, like when she was having those tantrums to do that, maybe it would have built the pattern that this is a way to co-regulate. Whereas before, I'm like, no, I'm not going to feed into the subconscious mind of getting my attention now. So I would shut down even more and be more stoic. So, you know, I wonder if it was implemented sooner, had it created a different response later.
It's possible. So you're saying that Sloane's programming at this point may be that because when she was younger and was getting programmed, what she learned was when I have a whole huge temper tantrum, Dad leaves. Mm-hmm. And so now I have a whole huge temper tantrum and I am freaking out and I feel ashamed because I'm bad and wrong and I can't control it. And so now it becomes a shame spiral also. Sure,
which I think is the other interesting part is that even growing in that over the last few years, I've really not left and stayed in there and stayed with her. And then she pushes and pushes and pushes. It's like she's so smart. She's like, well, I'm going to see how fucking far I can push until he leaves. And it's like, well, that seems to only stop then. So it is almost like I programmed it that way. It's very fascinating. So now I get to unprogram that.
Yeah, part of me feels like if you have two kids and they're having a power struggle in the back of the car and they're hitting each other and they're, you know, a lot of times that's attention seeking for the parent.
Sure.
This is, and in that place, I would say pull the car over into a parking lot. And if you're the parent, get out of the car and let the kids duke it out.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you remove yourself from that situation, they're like, oh, the person that we're trying to get the attention from is gone.
Yeah. Which is what I thought I was doing in these situations, right? That was where I thought I was going with these things.
Yeah. But now I'm wondering, there's this other part when people are having a big emotional expression, just being there and witnessing it.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is what she told me the other day.
She told you.
What I don't want. It makes it worse when you leave.
How do you stay, be present, witness it, be there, and not engage?
Yeah, which then comes back to everything we talk about, which is your self-work and being so comfortable with yourself that you can stay in the storm.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I know.
It always comes back to the same principles, which makes it easy.
It's so simple.
It's so simple, it's
and
hard.
It's so annoyingly not easy.
Yeah.
It's so simple.
Example one of emotionally immature parenting. So
No, I wouldn't say that was emotionally immature parenting. Emotionally immature people are people who are so disconnected from their emotions they don't even know they have them. They're completely self-centered. The world revolves around them, and there is no you. And they're doing everything that they can to make sure that whatever feelings or thoughts you're having are the ones that they want you to be having, because that makes life easy for them, because they don't know how to emotionally regulate at all. And so they're trying to control everything around them all the time, and especially the children, because the children are, anyone watching this, probably all of you have children, they're impossible humans,
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're dealing with an impossible human and you don't have any self-regulation at all, you're not even in touch with your own emotional state at all. The only option is to try to completely and utterly control the other person and make them who you need them to be, so that you can feel safe and you can breathe and manage yourself. So,
and the easiest thing to do is control a tiny human being when you're a giant.
Tiny human. Yeah, when you're a giant. And it's easy to do with shame and fear.
Yep.
And the result is, I'll give you an example. 2 clients this week. So one, her father would say, you should this, and you should have cleaned your room, and if you wore better clothes, and if you got better grades, and just everything, criticized absolutely everything. And then she was like, but my mom was a saint. And my mom would say, oh, don't worry about your dad. He's just trying to love you. Okay, so my client thinks her mother's a saint, but her mother's just as badly emotionally unavailable as the dad, because now the mother is invalidating that my client had feelings that were, wow, I really don't feel like I should be criticized so much. Why is dad so critical? And instead of mom being like, yeah, that's not right for people to criticize you, you're worth so much. Instead, mom was like, he's just trying to love you. And so it's completely invalidating of the feelings. And then I had a second client I was telling this story to, and she was like, oh shit, I did that to my kids. And it makes sense, right? It makes sense why we would do that.
Yep.
Because I know you're a good guy. You're just emotionally disconnected or whatever, if I'm your wife, and I'm trying to love the kid, and I know you're trying to love the kid. And I can see, as a logical person who has no emotions, that what you're doing is you're trying to guide our children. And so I'm like, no, children, he's trying to love you. But that's not love at all. Criticizing people is not loving them. It's not being emotionally present with them. It's not validating them. It's not teaching them who they are. It's basically controlling them with shame.
Which is why that exercise you had me do was unbelievable. It was which one? I know which one. I'm going to tell them which one, because I think everybody should do it. So let's segue into that, though.
Rocco, I love your vulnerability.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You guys, he's so cool to do this for you.
Thank you. It's uncomfortable. So let's peel that back. It's uncomfortable.
The exercise.
Yeah. No, I don't mind. Whatever. Fuck it. This is the whole point of the show. So one big frustration of mine right now is I'm witnessing one of the biggest gifts to the world right now is everybody's kind of doing this quote unquote inner child work and healing quote unquote their wounds from growing up. Right. And the duality of me being the man and the masculine gets very frustrated because I'm like, okay, well, I get it. Your feelings are accurate. They're validated. They're real. But because mom forgot to change your diaper for an hour when you were 4 or 2 or whatever age people stop going to the bathroom in diapers, it's not the same as the guy who lost 3 of his people in Afghanistan. And okay, let's not lump these. So the masculine part of me is like, oh my God, just shut the fuck up and move on with your life, right? The other part of me that has done a lot of this work is like, wow, it really helps you. Like, it really opens you up, right? But I think, so then it made me start to peel back and be like, okay, how have I applied these things to my life? And in all of those things, I never attached or blamed those things on my parents. And I see so many people walking around being like, oh, my mom or my dad, and I'm just healing from all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, no, it's not that.
Where whoever's helping them isn't guiding them correctly.
Right. And it's rampant right now. And it drives me nuts. And
more than likely, they're not getting help from somebody. They're just watching Instagram memes.
Sure. And I don't fault my parents for anything. I had the most amazing fucking childhood.
Well, just like when we started the podcast today and we were talking about your ex, it's not, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I'm responsible.
Yeah, you're exactly. Yeah, we can't blame other people.
Right.
Yeah, you can't blame your mom. You can't blame your dad. Like, yes, these things happened to me. Horrible things happened to me. Gabor Mate, who's a trauma researcher.
I thought you were trying to say a word incorrectly there, by the way. Usually I'm the one saying the word incorrectly.
He's a trauma researcher, and he says trauma isn't what happened to you. It's what didn't happen for you.
Mm.
And our parents...
I would challenge him, but that's okay. I would like to.
Well, you can challenge me because I believe it.
Yeah.
Our parents did the best that they could, just like you're doing the best that you could. And I'm doing the best that I can as a parent. Most of us are doing, even the mom who's defending the dad and even the dad who's being really critical, like those people are all doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
Our parents did the best they could with the tools that they had at the time that they had them.
100%.
And I will tell you, almost every single client, 30 years old, 50 years old, doesn't matter how old they are, when I start teaching them this stuff, they're like, oh, shit, I wish I'd learned this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Like, oh my God, how much of my life? And it's like, no. We're not here to shame you. Mm-hmm. We're not here to have you look at your life and be like, oh my God, how come I didn't know that earlier? How come my parents didn't know that? Blah, blah, blah. It's about, what am I learning today? How can I be present with myself today? What can I gain from today as I'm moving forward through my life? What feels amazing? What feels good? And how can I clearly move in a direction that feels delicious and amazing and wonderful and not full of shame and not full of fear? And the thoughts that I'm telling myself, are they the thoughts that these emotionally immature people said to me? Or can I learn that I am an awesome, amazing, beautiful, incredible, vibrant, creative human and tell myself that day after day after day, every time I wake up, every time I go to sleep, instead of hearing the critical voice of dad who's telling his daughter, you're not the right size, you're not wearing the right clothes, your hair doesn't look right, your grades aren't good enough, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right. Most of us, we get that programming from our parents. They're trying so hard to lift us up. But really, what we do is I say that your parents beat you over the head with a bat to try to get you to be good. And then when you leave their house, they hand you the bat and you do a way better job of beating yourself up than they ever did.
Better. It's interesting because it plays into that statistic and I don't know the actual details, but it's something like children. One of the guests I had on the podcast, he pulled up all the statistics, but it's something like if you do the IQ of a child in the first 5 years of their life, 70% of the children on the planet have genius level IQs.
Absolutely.
And then because they've heard no and experienced what you just experienced, by the time they're 18, less than 20% of the population has an IQ of a genius because they literally had it beaten out of them. That's it. That's the only difference that happened.
And what's so crazy is the parents are trying so hard to get them to be geniuses.
Yeah. And just almost leaving people up to their own demise will end up being a genius. Right, which is fascinating. But what I would say and challenge, and this is probably time for would be a whole nother podcast. Is he said it's not what happens to you; it's what it isn't about what happens to you. It's about what didn't happen for you. I would challenge that all of it happened for you. Right.
Sure. I mean, are we going to talk about quantum physics now?
Well, that's what I was saying. I said maybe it's for a different podcast. But let's stick on this topic for today.
There will be two more podcasts coming.
There will be two more. I definitely want to tell. So the exercise that you had me do that was unbelievable was for 7 days, 70 things that I forgive my mom for. But it's not like if your mom was an alcoholic, I forgive you for being an alcoholic. It was, and correct me on it, but I think it was something like, I forgive you for the guilt, shame, fear, or anger I felt when you X.
Correct.
Right. And it was like, so I forgive you for the shame I felt when you picked me up drunk at school. My mom didn't do these things. It's just an example, right? Because I know she'll listen to this and I'm like, Mom, you're not drunk, I know. But it has not, the exercise has nothing to do with the mom and everything to do with the mom and everything to do with you, and not attaching to that.
It has everything to do with how you perceived who you became because of your parents.
Yes. And when I finished the number 70 on day 7, I cried for probably 30 minutes straight. I was like, fuck, it makes me want to cry now. It was wild. And I remember doing it, messaging
So just to be clear, you write down 70 things every day for 7 days consistently. And if you miss a day, you have to start over.
Start all the way over. And once I got to day 3 and realized how hard it was, I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm starting this over again. Like, and then I got to like day 5 and I was like, it gets hard. The first day you're like, here's 70, no big fucking deal. And like you go through it and you're like, I got this.
Yeah,
this
you're like, you're a fucking asshole. This and that, and all these things I hate about you.
Yeah. And then day 2, you're like, oh no, like I have to really think. And man, that changed a lot, just like those little exercises. But again, not attaching to, I don't know. Again, it's.
When I did it, I had 70 different things for 7 days for my mother. I mean, what is that? 444 things? I can't do math, but however many of those things it was.
Yeah.
They were all different. And I did 7 days and I was like, I could do more.
I couldn't.
I was so mad.
I definitely couldn't do more.
Dad,
like it was definitely a struggle for me to get to those 7.
When I did my dad, I did like 2 days and I was like, oops. And then I did like 5 days and I was like, oops. And then by the time I got to the end, I literally wrote over and over and over and over the same thing, which was just basically, Dad, I forgive you for all the shame I feel about myself.
Yeah.
I wrote it like 190 times.
Yeah.
Because I'd already written everything out 5 times previously.
Yeah, because you had to keep starting over.
I had to keep starting over, yeah. And so it just got to the point where I was like, okay, what I really need to hammer home is letting go of the shame that I have because of all the criticism that I received. And I know my dad has a big heart. He's trying, just like this other dad, trying so hard to get me to be a good person and do the right thing. And the problem with, if I want you to do what I think is the right thing, then your thing makes you wrong.
Yeah, I don't like to be wrong.
And my things were always different.
Oh, for sure.
My dad. So I was always wrong.
Yeah. That doesn't feel
If
good.
my dad's conservative, I'm liberal. If my dad's straight, I'm gay. If my you know what I mean? We are completely different humans in every way. We actually just had a psychic do a relationship reading on us together.
I can't believe he went to that.
No, it was like his choice. We went to Key West together.
Okay.
That was my idea, to have a weekend with my dad. And he's like, let's go do the psychic reading while we're waiting for this. It was amazing.
I met your dad and I do not.
Yeah, it would be like you getting a psychic reading like 2 years ago, you know? Just, no way. No. Yeah, but he was like open to us. So great.
Even now, it's just a fun.
Yeah, but that's how it was
really
for him.
funny.
It was a fun thing.
Yeah.
And the lady told us that we're like, he's the sand in my oyster and I'm the sand in his oyster. So because of my dad, I am this beautiful pearl. And because of me, he's a pearl.
Yeah.
And without that grinding that we give each other, we wouldn't be such magnificent people.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's
which is your point with the Gabor Mate thing, which is like, maybe it was for you.
Yeah.
Maybe it did happen for you.
Right. Because it builds. I mean, iron sharpens iron. We know all that stuff. It builds. It builds the character.
And maybe you chose it. Who knows? We'll get into that later.
You did.
You did. Just so you know.
All right. Well, this continues to go into part of what other things I think we want to talk about is then how, and I talked about this on 1 or 2 of the podcasts before this with my friend Casey and her husband Freddie, that having parents that are that won't pick up, having parents that are I don't want to say emotionally immature. So I have 2 really good friends that I went to high school with that moved. They used to live in Charlotte, and then they decided they were going to really start the family thing, and so they moved back home to where I'm from, which is a small town because that's where all the family is. And they moved back home with the purpose of being told you're going to have all this help. You got all of the family members. You got mom, you got dad, you got all these things. You're going to have all this help.
Back into the lion's den.
Yeah. And turns out one all that help didn't really present itself. And only one of them, those grandparents, do they even feel comfortable having their child around because of how we parent now. Like, look, my daughter doesn't have to give you a hug and kiss if she doesn't fucking want to. And if you're going to encroach on that boundary, you don't get to hang out with my daughter. It's that simple, grandparent, like, and those aren't my experiences. This is their experience,
and that's
though.
Healthy. It's healthy.
Yeah, it's for sure healthy.
Not everyone's doing that.
No, but they are. And, and so it's just, and that's just a tiny little example about, what they're dealing with. And it's sad and unfortunate, because I definitely have grandparents that really respect the boundaries and really care and are really present with, like, what I mean? It's awesome and I'm blessed with it, but,
you're so lucky.
I am very lucky. I really am,
we don't all have that.
No. And, mine, I think that, part of what I think with that is, they don't see her all the time. So that when they're there, they really want to be grandparents. They really want to have fun. They really want to do the grandparent role and not take on the parenting role. And, so I think that the distance really makes that a lot easier to handle. But so how then do you recommend, because we didn't have to work on this together because I don't really have that experience. How then do you recommend somebody handles that? I mean, because their experience on how they handle that is, well, you just don't get to fucking see our kids unless either we're around or we decide, and this is what it is, because they are of utmost importance to us. Right.
So I love that you are bringing this to me today, because literally yesterday I was talking with one of my girlfriends and we were talking about emotionally immature parents. And she's like, yeah, that's why I moved from Russia to America so that I don't have to deal with my parents. And I was like, no, we call that a fuck you boundary. Right. And she's like, well, how do you deal with this kind of a thing? And she says, and she starts acting like her parent with me. And she starts criticizing and whatever. And I just kept meeting her with love. I kept meeting her with love. And I kept, so for instance, let's say, like, what would you say if you were a nasty parent? Like, what? Give me an idea.
To the child?
To me.
To you.
Whatever. Whoever. My child or me. Like, give me an example.
You put too much makeup on today. Right? No?
Sure.
I don't know. I don't.
So let's say somebody comes to me and says, you put too much makeup on today. I would say, are you trying to insult me?
No.
It feels hurtful.
So you just disarm the whole thing.
Disarm the whole thing, right?
Because they don't really think they're hurting you. They're just like, you look so beautiful without makeup on. Why are you wearing makeup? It's probably what they're coming from. Perhaps. I don't know. Perhaps. I mean, that's just how I feel about women in general. So that's fine. Yeah. That's
perhaps.
Yeah.
And so, I like that you said the word disarm, because what we're doing is the person is telling me I'm wearing too much makeup because they have their opinion, which is right.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing is wrong.
Sure.
And so I'm just saying, are you saying that you think that the way that I'm doing my life is wrong? And as soon as you say that to somebody controlling, or because they're doing this unconsciously.
Yeah.
And as soon as you bring this to their attention, they're like just like you did,
Yeah.
And it is very disarming. And so there's all different kinds of ways of doing that. And it comes back to, like, do I love myself, and can I get on a little tangent here about self-care and self-love? Like, it is not getting your nails done. It is not getting a massage. It is not getting your hair done. This is not self-love. Self-love is going, okay, I'm having limiting beliefs that I'm not pretty. Fuck that shit.
Eradicate them. Rip them from the fucking roots.
I am pretty. And if I don't think that I'm pretty, I'm going to ask everybody that I know if I'm pretty. Can you tell me what's pretty about me? Let me see if I can figure out what's pretty about me. What's beautiful about me? Oh, I love people, and I love animals, and I'm really giving, and I give really great hugs. These things are very beautiful about me. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that I'm not beautiful. It has nothing to do with my fucking hair or nails.
Yeah.
And I'm super annoyed. I have to get on like a little pedestal about this, that self-love and self-care is not taking a bath and getting a manicure.
Yeah.
It's doing shadow work. That's what self-love and self-care means. It means I'm going in to the depths of despair. I'm going into my shame spiral. I'm going into hell, hopefully with someone else who's been to hell and can bring you out.
Dante's Inferno, baby. That's why it's one of the best books. I fucking love that book. Yeah.
But like because otherwise you're going to keep hearing your mother tell you that you're too fat and your thighs are too, and your hair is too, and your makeup's too, and you're going to think that you're solving this problem by getting your hair and your makeup and your thighs changed. And that's never going to be, you're never going to feel love for yourself by changing your outward appearance.
Yep. It's interesting. So I recently just did,
and I don't mean to say never. Maybe it works for some people. But I don't like to use the word never.
Sure,
I caught myself.
Yeah. So I just did recently a exercise where I wrote, like, I charge a lot of money to come into my office, right? Mm-hmm. And so I recently was like, I want to reinforce the validity of this for myself, right?
Yeah, good, because I'm over here going, I don't really think it's a lot of money. It's affordable.
Yeah, it is. But, well, in the grand scheme of chiropractic offices, if you were to compare it to other people.
But in the grand scheme of what you're able to do.
Hence the list.
Okay. Call a friend.
Hence the list. And
co-regulating works better than regulating alone.
Well, I co-regulated with the list.
It's Rocco. It's very Rocco. I will do it all alone.
All alone. But I wrote 50. That's it. Mm-hmm. And then co-regulations when the husky comes to play. But the 50 things I wrote down were all those things. Like, okay, why is it worth this? Why do I believe it's worth this? What do I know about what's happening? What do I know that someone comes to my office that has seen 300 doctors and gets 30 injections in their head because they can't see, they can't get out of bed, they haven't worked in 5 years, and I give them one adjustment and all of it's gone? Well, that's a good reason to charge what I charge. And it's like
a good reason to charge like 20,000 times more what you charge,
right.
Actually.
Probably. And part of that is getting to this, like doing that to get to the point where like you look at this list and you see like, what do you bring to the table to justify the reality of it? And, we have to play in both worlds, the world of, the esoteric and then the world of the real. And by affirming the truth, you can bend the reality of what's happening. And the truth is that no disease exists, no poverty exists, no hate exists, no any of these things exist. So
until we program our children to have them. Which is exactly what I'm attempting to not program into Sloan. That's why you're having this podcast.
Exactly. And so one of the ways I like to do that as an adult, and it's one of, I believe the most, take the thing that is driving you nuts or bothering you or you don't want, and then tell the truth about it. And when I said tell the truth about it, I mean tell the actual truth about it. In spirituality, what is it? Like, it doesn't exist. It isn't real. And then walk yourself logically through the process with a pen and paper, because you want the psychomotor neuro effect. You want the entire brain to light up because you want to hardwire this in your neurology. Don't fucking type it. Don't just think about it. Logically explain to yourself how it's not fucking true. End of story. And then when you get to the end of how it's not true, tell the story of how it is.
Well, and you and I do similar work. And it sounds like we're getting a little into quantum physics here.
Well, how do you not?
I know, how do we not anyway? Especially the two of us together. But you're not fixing anyone with chiropractic, and I'm not fixing anyone with craniosacral or all.
When I tell chiropractors, I think it's so mad.
All the other millions of things that I'm doing, and if you're meditating with incense, it's not the meditation, it's not the incense. Like it is the natural state, but we've been so fucked up that we're not in the natural state. So we do need chiropractors and massage therapists and life coaches and all these things to re-regulate the system, to put the system back into neutral so we can go, oh, I am the most ultimate creator of the universe.
Everything, right? And nothing else exists around you but you. And the way what I've lately been talking about, like when I went and did that talk the other weekend, is it's that ladder. And so we start at the bottom of this ladder of like despair or whatever, nothing's fucking working out for us or whatever the bottom of your ladder is. And as you go up that ladder, tools on each rung of the ladder help you get to the next one, which then the top rung or the top rungs are, go ahead.
That's the fun game. Keep going.
Yeah. So then the top rungs are, you realize that you don't need any of the things.
Right.
But I believe what we have done now is everyone gets to this one rung that is,
Not everyone.
well, most people, yeah, not everyone. No, let's say that. Most people get to that one rung that society really feeds into because it's the meshing of the ego and the victim, and it sticks there. And if you're always a victim and the ego's always in charge, you always are going to need the crystal. Right. And we have a culture
and to put other people down.
And to put other people down. So now we have a culture that reinforces buy, need, do all of these things. So I can't do this podcast unless I'm holding my little beautiful crystal because it's going to bring out all the beautiful spiritual energy in me.
Yeah, but if you believe that, you know it's true.
But that's the thing, right? And so that's what I mean by the rung. We get stuck on this, and no one teaches that the only reason this worked and gave you a better podcast episode is because you believed it. So now take that and believe that you are of supreme power and intelligence and throw the crystal away and just keep it because it looks pretty.
It's pretty.
It's pretty.
Yeah, going back
and
to
that's the hardest work.
And back to something that you said earlier, I think there's another rung that spiritual people get stuck on, which is, let's say there's a husband and this is the most common. There's a husband and wife. They're not getting along. That happens because we're people. And then
weird.
And then usually it's the woman, which is sad and frustrating because it's actually the man who can make the most change. But that's another podcast.
Okay, but hold on, that is another podcast. But it's actually true, and it's true scientifically. It's fascinating.
Right.
Which when you can go to my Amazon, I think, my Amazon store and get the Man's Guide to Women.
Man's Guide to Women.
Man's Guide to Women. John Gottman talks about it.
And it's literally clinically proven. So anyway.
It sucks when you read it, just saying.
It's amazing.
It really is amazing. It really
is so simple. Like we were saying before, it's so simple, but it's so annoying how simple it is. But anyway, that's not what I'm trying to say.
Sorry.
So the couple is having problems, and usually it's the woman who comes and finds me or is looking for help. And so you start teaching the woman all these things, and then they climb up on one rung. Okay, one rung. And so what happens on that first rung is it's like, well, I know all of these things, honey, and you don't know any of the things, and I know all of the things, and so we should do all of the things that I say because I'm right and you're wrong. And this huge air of superiority happens where I'm the spiritual person and you all are peons.
I'm going to peel back the curtain. We don't like that.
Nobody likes that. Right. But when you're in it, you're like, I am so enlightened and you are not. And then you get to a point, the next rung is where you go like, oh shit, that was really shitty. I was really being shitty. Because the next rung is where you actually meet people where they are. You meet yourself where you are. You've done your shadow work and you laugh at it and you're like, haha, it's funny that I thought that I was all these things. You make fun of it. You turn it into your kink. Like it becomes a fun and playful thing. I have a partner.
Be water. I
have a partner that we like literally laugh at ourselves when shitty things happen. Like literally we just crack up. Because it's like, look what I created. That's great. Oh my God, look how superior I was being. What a dick I was. Oh my God, what a victim, Yeah. And it becomes funny because you can see it all. And when you get to that point, you can actually meet people where they are instead of being like, I am so superior to you.
Yeah.
And you are so inferior to me. And if you could only do the work, you could be as special as me. And it's so ridiculous because when you actually do the work, you can meet the parents who live in Russia, and you don't have to have fuck you boundaries with them anymore because you can say, hey, are you okay?
Well,
because you're hurting me.
To take it a step farther, the more up the rung we go, I've seen the relationship in Russia just changes without me having to say a word.
I mean, absolutely.
But
it's because our perception is everything.
Right. And it just, boom, instantly shifts.
Well, I had a conversation with my dad quite a few years ago now where I was on the first rung, and I was like, I am better than him. He's such an asshole, And I was trying to have boundaries with him. And at the time, boundaries to me meant I'm going to control everything that you do.
Right. Well, it's super interesting, too, because I've met your dad.
Yeah.
it exudes off him how much he loves you and the kids.
Oh, I mean,
like
he
oozes off of him.
Loves us.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the man absolutely, but he's also very emotionally mature and very controlling, and he wants
oozes off of him
too. Superiority, all of that. Yeah. I mean, I come by it naturally, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree.
For sure.
The girls yesterday were talking about how Athena came from Zeus's head, and I was like, oh my God, that's me and my dad.
Well, it's also, again, though, because the pearl, like, that's why you're so fucking good at what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I sat down and had this conversation with him quite a few years ago that was like, I need you to stop giving me advice. And he was like, you want me to stop loving you? And I was like, oh, wait a minute, what? Because I perceive your advice as you controlling me and criticizing me and telling me I'm doing everything in the whole world wrong. And what you're telling me is that you love me? And it was this, like you're saying, it was one of those moments where just my whole perspective, everything about my dad changed. Yeah. And from that moment on, every time he spoke, it doesn't matter what he said, which usually, by the way, comes out very critical and nasty. I mean,
very blunt.
He's called me a broken bicycle that no one could ever ride again, and therefore he should throw me away.
He should have said, Dad, tons of people ride this every night.
That's the kind of thing that an emotionally immature person will say.
Yeah.
That's a mean thing to say. Yeah. And if you're not secure in yourself, you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm a broken bicycle. Yeah. And instead I say, what did you call me? What? Excuse me? Which confronts it. Like if you actually said that to someone and then they confronted it, you'd be like, I better not say things like that to this person again because I'm going to get confronted on it.
Yeah.
And if I wait 2 days or 5 days or 3 years and say, remember when you said that to me? It's like, no. And you get totally gaslit.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, but the point is that in that moment, for me, everything changed. Like you're saying with the parents in Russia, right? As we do the work and we have these realizations and I love myself and I take care of myself and I can see, I'm looking for how is my dad loving me? Now I can actually have a relationship with a person that for years I hung up on because everything he said was just too inappropriate. Mm-hmm. And like you're saying, that switch happened inside of me. It can happen inside of us. And as soon as that happens inside of us, the whole world changes. And now all of a sudden the world is amazing and we can create so much good stuff.
I love it. All right, we're going to end there and we're going to do another one because there's so much more we can talk about. But before we end, tell everybody where they can find you if they want to work with you one-on-one, which I highly recommend, and all that good stuff. And then we'll sign off.
Okay, so my website is my name, common spelling, just kidding. It's Heather Hundhausen. I will sing it to you the way I was taught as a child. Hundhausen.
I remember when I pulled up to the Formula One track to go because we were, touring the Formula One track, and they're like, "Who are you here with?" And I'm like, and you're on the phone with me, and you're like, Hundhausen. I'm like, that.
Some big German name.
Yeah.
Hundhausen. Yeah, HeatherHundhausen.com. It's simple, but it's not easy. Yeah. Just like everything.
Pretty perfect.
Yeah. And then all my handles on social media are HLEIGH HUND. So H Lee Hund.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love it. All right. Awesome. This was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rocco.